Okay, I made it. Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. It's kind of become a combo book garden, plushie garden, but I think that works out just fine. This is the 5th live stream of Thousand Autumns, Book 5, and it is also when we start our extras, which is a little confusing because we have extras that are named extras, and then we just have different titles. So we're just going to go until I find my little post-it note that tells me to stop. But anyway, I am super excited to be here. I had a fantastic weekend. I actually went and saw Iron Lung, which was fabulous. Hello, Chi Chi Kiki. How you doing today? Hello, Annika. I saw some of your posts. The con was this weekend, and I saw that some people bought some of your stuff, and that's exciting. I'm really happy that they did. It looked very cool. No, it was just a good time. Just super busy day. I worked out, so that's why it was a minute or two late today. I'm sorry. But no, just had a really great weekend. I got pancakes, which makes everything better. I tried out a new coffee place, and I saw a movie. It was a very busy day. No, but has anyone else had a great weekend or just had something exciting weekend? Yeah, then I turned around and spent my earnings on more Dan May stuff. Hey, I totally get it. I actually am starting to sell like bracelets or like connector phone keychains to some of the people I work with because I'm like, con season's coming up, and I spontaneously decided that now is the perfect time to get another tattoo at the end of this month, and we'll try out a new con. Why not? So we might be selling some stuff to afford things sometime. Right? It will be near the end of the month, so actually probably right around when we are starting our next store, our Peerless. If I'm calculating correctly, no, it'll be like the week after. I am trying out Anime Milwaukee just for a day with a friend in Wisconsin. It sounds like a lot of fun. I've seen some other people in the Danmei community going to it, so I am hopeful about it. I'm actually going to meet up with someone else from the Danmei community, so fingers crossed. But if not, I'm just going to have a great time with my friend. But yeah. You mentioned that, yeah. I hope you have a good time vending. Get lots of sales and find some cool stuff. Oh my gosh, what is my hair doing tonight? Nope, that's worse. Whatever. I already ruined it. There. It'll do what it does. No, so I'm super excited. I'll have some Danmei stuff to pass out. I'll have some just I love trinket trading. It's so much fun to me. So I'm really hoping they have trinket trading at Anime Milwaukee. But if they don't, I'm going to be trading anyway. Hello, Truffle. Been missing you. How you been? Sorry. Didn't have time to put my water in a cup today. I also broke my cup today, so I was very sad. How are you doing today? We are going to be starting the extras. So you did a good one. Right? Me too. It's next month. It'll be the first con of the season. Well, I'm sorry everything's still insane, but yes, I agree. Sometimes just being home makes a bit of the difference. No, I totally get it. I hope whatever's going on, it gets solved the best way possible sooner rather than later. Oh yeah, I forgot to do the legalities. I I do not own anything. I'm not getting paid. I'm not sponsored. If Seven Seas ever wishes to sponsor me, which I highly doubt will ever happen, I'd be very honored. But at the current point in time, it's just me, myself, and I doing what I do because I enjoy it. And all the lovely people that decide to watch, I am very grateful for. The only thing I do own is the physical copy of the book right there and my time, and sometimes not even that. To give up using my computer at my brother's place. The kids were practicing flips and one landed wrong and knocked my... Oh man. Is your computer all right? Like, are you okay? It sounds like they landed on you. I know I break like a glow stick. So, but anyway, this is a very chill stream. If you couldn't already tell, I will talk to my lovely book garden over here. You're fine and the computer is fine. Okay. Good. That's you being fine is more important than the computer, but I'm glad the computer is fine. I'm going to start calling you all my book garden. Or flower garden? Flower garden. Flower garden and book garden. You all get to decide today. You are some of my main body. So, you guys get to decide. But I mean, you'll always be my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. Don't worry. What else am I forgetting? I feel like I'm forgetting something. No, I was in the middle of my spiel about this being a very chill stream. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but maybe stick around. See, you might enjoy. This is going to be an especially fun one because it's the epilogue, 4,000 Autumns, which we've been working on. Oh boy, Flower Garden and Book Garden are at a tie. Maybe I'll make an official post on the comments. What is it? Community page for posts. I'll make it a post. I'll do that after the stream, and everyone can vote, and I'll give it a week. And then we will use it. So a band I was looking forward to seeing canceled their U.S. tour. Still annoyed about that. Oh, okay. Not a great week for you, Truffle. I'm sorry. But medical issues can't really help that. Matter about the computer healing. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. No, I feel that. Yeah. I have something exciting that happened. I am still waiting on my Heaven Official's Blessing last book. It keeps getting delayed, so I'm just hoping it gets here safely. But once it does, I will show that off. But I did end up ordering a new desk mat because mine is getting a little interesting. And I found some that were Danmei themed. 12 Kingdom series. That sounds familiar, so maybe? Okay. Which one is this? And then this one. Okay, so I got two MDZS themed ones, and then I got one MXTX themed one. They were all from the same person who I've bought stuff from before. CQL. Adapted into an anime in the 90s. Maybe that's why I recognize it. Okay. Do we want to see the MXTX first or the Modao Zushi ones? This is the main character is a chosen one, but everything and everyone is trying to kill her. That does sound so familiar. Oh my goodness. these going to be the right size? Hang on. Oh, yeah, it'll be good. Okay. Maybe a little short. That's okay. Okay. I'm going to do the MXTX one first. I'm going to have to scooch back. So this is the color. Wait. So this is the MXTX one. I think is pretty cool. Like that they're all like kind of just chilling, kind of pseudo ghost city. So I like that one a lot. It was the only MXTX one, like combo-y, that had all of them. So I enjoy that. It smells a little funky. Definitely got that fun plasticky smell of a new mat. And then this is one of my favorite songs. It's the cover for Inquiry. So like when I saw this, I was like, oh. So of course, like I love that. Whatever, like I'm definitely gonna use at least one other one on my table, right? So I managed to find these for like $10 each. So I was like, how could I resist at that price? Like they're huge and they're MXTX. Like, come on. All right, which way is up? Okay, and then last one. A little more complex. It is not official merch, unfortunately, but I can sell the site that I got it from. So these are some of my favorite Modao Zushi prints. I will decide probably tomorrow. Actually, probably this weekend because I have to move like all of this setup. No, I think they're called CQL. They're on the Shopify link. They're actually based in China, so they are able to get some stuff. Super sweet person. They're a smaller company. And I started buying from them like when I first got into Danmei. So like they're super sweet. They had to change shipping recently. So they had some issues, but they're back on to pretty regular shipping. But yeah, I will link. I will definitely link. They have a number of other ones as well. There's like 12 different designs, but I'm a sucker for Modao Zushi. But that was my super exciting thing that came today. I will write myself a note to link the mats. The mats. I'll put it right here. Link the mats. Okay. Let's just then, yeah. I love when I can find something pretty cool. I also have one that I use upstairs in my room, and it's the one where like the bunnies are splashing through the ink while Nanzan is writing and Wei Ying's coming in through the window. I love that picture. I was super excited when I found it. Oh, you pre-ordered the Scumvillain hardcovers. Oh, the local eagles are nesting. That is super exciting. We need more eagles nesting. The other day it was really crazy. I think it was Friday. I was coming home and I was just driving. We have some forests and things around, but I was driving. I was like, That's an eagle. That's an eagle just flying around. And it was huge. And just chilling, flying over traffic. I was like, since when do we have an eagle around here? We get hawks, but I hope they have a successful nesting too. Okay, we are right at... They're so big. So big. They really are. I think it will probably be 15:45. Okay. Let's go. So last time we actually finished the official storyline. Now this is all extras, epilogue, side stories, and it's actually half the book is just extras, basically. So we will eat good for the next 2 weeks. We actually end right before Valentine's Day when I have a nice little fanfic recorded for you all. I think you'll enjoy it. It's already recorded and it will appear on the 14th. You will probably have to look at the holiday playlist again because I still am working on figuring out how to make them appear just as videos. But it will be there. There will be a post about it that'll have the link, if nothing else. So that will be exciting. But last time we had the gigantic fight between Yan Wuxi and Hulagu, and it ended technically with Hulagu losing, but Yan Wuxi was also very, very, very injured. His life force was exhausted, his yang energy gone. Everything seemed to have withered away. There was no sign of life. So Shen Qiao ended up making this death-defying leap over the canyons to get to Yan Wuxi, catch him as he's falling, thinks he's dead, starts like shoving medicine down his throat and trying to bring him back. And he closed his eyes, hoping that everything before him was just a dream. However, when Shen Qiao next opened his eyes, that man who'd treated everything as a game, who'd always been egotistical and arrogant without compare, was lying still in his arms. His eyes were tightly shut, and there was no life in him. He'd never known this feeling before, of sorrow and suffering swelling to an extreme, when the heart tangles into knots. It's coming. So it felt something like this. Yan Wuxi. Shen Qiao's voice was quiet and hoarse as he spoke into his ear. If you wake up, if you can wake up, I'll do anything you want. Even if you tell me that this is all just a hoax that you planned. Shen Qiao couldn't speak any further. With a shock, he suddenly realized just how heavy the weight of this man already was inside his heart. It was heavier than 1,000 tons, so heavy that he was completely unable to withstand it. He shivered and dropped his head, then slowly pressed his lips to the other man's face, then forehead. He lightly caressed him before burying his face into the crook of Yan Wuxi's neck. Moisture gradually seeped through the collar's fabric. Then Yan Wuxi suddenly moved, just the slightest bit. Shen Qiao almost suspected that he'd seen wrong. He didn't even have the courage to raise his head. But the next was dumbstruck. So this was literally last week. It is technically the end of the main storyline. And as I said last time, it was a very Yan Wuxi ending. But yeah. Okay, so we shall begin. Epilogue, Part 1. The moment he saw Hulagu collapse, Yu Shengyan was first ecstatic, then horrified, for he knew very well that Hulagu was no ordinary person. He was a peerless martial artist, practically the best in the world. No matter how strong Shizun was, there was no way he could have defeated Hulagu and escaped unscathed. When this thought emerged, he was desperate to go check on Shizun, but the distance between here and Bamboo Peak wasn't something he could traverse, no matter what he did. Just as Yu Shengyan was going to descend the mountain, a figure moved even faster. It was Shen Qiao. Yu Shengyan stared agape as Shen Qiao leapt right into the sky and swept to the opposite peak, riding on the wind like a godly immortal. Which, again, that's something that's very interesting between this and a lot of other novels with cultivation where sword riding was not a thing in this. They had sword heart, they had sword chi, they had sword spirit, etc., but they did not have flying swords as a thing. So this was completely unprecedented, where Shen Qiao basically rode his sword to a point over, technically rode a tree branch, over the valley. Yeah. The cries that had been about to burst from Yu Shengyan died in his throat. Like everyone else there, he could only watch, eyes wide and tongue tied, as Shen Qiao drifted toward Bamboo Peak. To be precise, Shen Qiao really was drifting. The gales at the mountain summit were bitingly cold. Even if one stood still, their robes would thresh unceasingly in the wind. The person was... sorry. Okay. The cries that had been about to burst from Yu Shengyan died in his throat. Like everyone else there, he could only watch, eyes wide and tongue-tied, as Shen Qiao drifted towards Bamboo Peak. To be precise, Shen Qiao really was drifting. The gales at the mountain summit were bitingly cold. Even if one stood still, their robes would thrash unceasingly in the wind. The person wasn't a martial artist, but an ordinary person, the wind would have blown them right off unless they clung tightly to a tree trunk. Even the Wang siblings, who stood among martial artist masters, were forced to secretly use their internal energy from time to time to secure themselves, lest they be sent flying in a moment of carelessness. Sorry, my brother texted me and it distracted me and I lost my place. Yet within those violent winds, Shen Qiao's clothes fluttered as he steadily drifted towards the opposite peak. He seemed to be moving slowly, but in truth, it was incredibly fast. From one peak to the other, he'd managed to traverse a distance that no ordinary person could overcome. In terms of Qinggong alone, there were likely very few people in the world who could match him. It was possible that even Shizun would find himself slightly inferior. Yu Shengyan thought on this, but in the next moment he abruptly returned to his senses and remembered his original goal to go down the mountain. At this time, yet another person stole in front of him, his speed around 1/3 faster than Yu Shengyan's. It was such a steep mountain path, yet that person traversed it like it was flat ground. He soon vanished from Yu Shengyan's line of sight. When he'd come up earlier, Yu Shengyan had sighted Duan Wenyang, but as their shifus were dueling, the two of them had no heart to fight themselves. At this moment, Duan Wenyang had seen Hulagu fall. With his heart naturally torn with anxiety, he hurried over. Yu Shengyan had once heard that Duan Wenyang had suffered a great deal of contempt within the Khaganate when he was young. It was only after Hulagu had grown fond of him and taken Duan Wenyang as his disciple that his circumstances had drastically changed. So despite Duan Wenyang's overwhelming ambition, he was incredibly filial to his Shizun. But Yu Shengyan's current mood wasn't much calmer than Duan Wenyang's. They both ran down the mountain, one in front and the other trailing behind. Upon arriving at the foot of Yinghuai Peak, they were about to start climbing when they saw Shen Qiao from afar, walking down with Yan Wuxi on his back. "Taoist Master Shen!" Yu Xingyan called, and he quickly rushed over. He saw Yan Wuxi sprawled over Shen Qiao's back. His Shizen's eyes were tightly closed, and his complexion was a deathly gray. Yu Xingyan's face immediately fell. "Shizen!" "Let's talk later." Shen Qiao only spoke these 3 words. "Taoist Master Shen!" Duan Wenyang called after him. "Please, how is my Shizen?" Shen Qiao sent him a glance. "Just now, I was only focused on bringing Sect Leader Yan down, so I didn't have time to look after your Shifu. I'm not too sure." There was nothing Duan Wenyang could say. At that moment, he even suspected that Shen Qiao might have taken advantage of his Shizen's predicament and killed him. At that time, there'd only been the 3 of them on Bamboo Peak. No one would be able to know the truth. But Duan Wenyang immediately rejected the thought the moment it flashed into his mind. Even though they were on different sides, Duan Wenyang had to admit that, given Shen Qiao's moral character, he'd never do such a thing. Some people were never destined to become friends, but some people's characters were such that even their enemies couldn't criticize them. Perhaps this could describe Shen Qiao. I mean, I think so. So he said nothing in the end and simply watched as Shen Qiao and his companions faded into the distance. Then he turned and swept up the mountain. Yu Shengyan had no time to spare Duan Wenyang any attention. He followed closely after Shen Qiao all the way until they arrived at the spare villa. Yan Wuxi had always been incomparably powerful in the eyes of others. The steward had never seen him like this. He'd originally come out joyfully to greet them, but now he found himself greatly terrified as well. Yu Shengyan mustered up the courage to touch Yan Wuxi's hand, and his soul almost scattered in fright. Why is he cold?" "His injuries are too severe," Shen Qiao told him. "I'll write a prescription. Grab 3 portions of the medicine, then add 4 bowls of water and simmer it over low heat until there's only 1 bowl's worth left. Do this twice a day." Yes!" Yu Shengyan knew that Xuandu Mountain's knowledge had been passed down over hundreds of years, so they'd certainly have some life-saving recipes that weren't shared with outsiders. Even the remedies within the imperial palaces wouldn't be able to compare. Shen Qiao carried Yan Wuxi into his room before carefully laying him down. He checked his pulse, wrote down the prescription, and then fed him the medicine all by himself. Perhaps it was Shen Qiao's prescription that worked, or perhaps it was Yan Wuxi's own cultivation of his internal circulation. Either way, 3 days later, he finally woke. "Shizen," Yu Xingyan said, as he had just entered the room with a bowl of piping hot medicine. When he saw him, he couldn't help but shout in joy. This caused Shen Qiao, who'd been dozing on the side with his forehead propped on his hand, to jump awake as well. Yan Wuxi opened his eyes and looked at his disciple, who was about to help him up to feed him medicine. "Leave." His wasn't a slow reaction. He quickly glanced at Shen Qiao. Shen Qiao nodded. "You can leave. I'll do it." Yu Shengyan gave his own Shizen another glance. Ever since Yan Wuxi had woken up, his gaze had practically been fixed on Shen Qiao. He didn't look at Yu Shengyan once. Ouch. Yu Shengyan really gets the short end of the stick so much of this novel. He's like, "I'm so happy you're alive, Shizen." "Leave. I'm flirting. Get out." Ay. A sense of sorrow suddenly erupted within Yu Shengyan, something like a rootless blade of grass battered by the cold wind and rain. He handed the bowl to Shen Qiao and silently took his leave. Shen Qiao hadn't noticed Yu Shengyan's feelings. He scooped up a spoonful of medicinal soup and brought it to Yan Wushi's mouth. He'd done these same actions for 3 days. They were already very practiced. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Not bad," said Yan Wushi lazily. Though his complexion was a bit pale, neither his posture nor his expression resembled an injured patient. "Your pulse has been gradually stabilizing, though there's still some weakness," Shen Qiao told him. "You'll need to recuperate slowly. It seems like the flaw within your demonic core really has been fully repaired. Otherwise..." He shook his head and spoke no further. Otherwise, the one who'd been able to descend the mountain wouldn't have been Yan Wushi, but Hulagu. 20 years ago, Hulagu had lost to Chief Ingui by a hair's breadth. 20 years later, he could have only gotten stronger. Yan Wushi had taken an enormous risk with this battle. Even if he'd managed to see through to his opponent's weaknesses at the very last moment, with how closely matched their internal energy was, a head-on clash could only lead to one conclusion. Either the death of Hulagu or of Yan Wushi. Or both. We got pretty close to both. If Shen Qiao hadn't leapt directly to him from Yinghuai Peak, if he'd first descended before climbing up Bamboo Peak, that small sliver of lost time could have changed everything, and perhaps Yan Wushi wouldn't have been so fortunate, as I just mentioned. Yan Wushi sent him a soft smile. "Ah, Qiao, do you still remember what you said before? You said that as long as I woke up, you'd do anything." Shen Qiao's hand, extended halfway, froze in midair. "That's something that I said out of desperation. A gentleman's words cannot be repealed." Yan Wushi said icily. I'm sorry, I said that very flirtily, not icily. "A gentleman's words cannot be repealed," Yan Wushi said icily. Shen Qiao was helpless. "Then what do you want?" "The medicine is too bitter." Poor Taoist Master Shen was so pure and simple, he hadn't figured out what Yan Wushi meant yet. "Then shall I go and ask for some honey?" Yan Wushi shook his head and took the bowl, tilted his head back, and drank it in one gulp. Then he suddenly grabbed Shen Qiao's lapels and pulled him close, pressing his mouth to the other man's with unerring accuracy. Shen Qiao's eyes went wide. His first instinct was to push him away, but Yan Wushi's embrace was incredibly tight. If he used force, he could hurt him. During this moment of hesitation, Yan Wushi had already thoroughly sampled the taste of that tongue and pair of lips. That long-awaited taste he'd yearned after. It was unforgettable. Ugh. An astringent bitterness tinged with medicine forced its way into Shen Qiao's mouth. His momentary softness had already given Yan Wushi full rein, and Shen Qiao lost all ground. Right now, both his hands were restrained and his center of gravity tipped back while Yan Wushi insatiably pressed himself on top. Shen Qiao's waist was unable to support the weight of two people, and he was forced to straighten it, lifting his chin. Saliva overflowed from the corner of his lip, following the line of that beautiful, fair neck as it meandered downward. A little bit of ick, not gonna lie. By the time Shen Qiao finally came to his senses and shoved Yan Wushi away, he didn't realize just how pitiful his current appearance was. The hair at his temples was mused from all the rubbing, and his eyes were glossy with tears, like two pools of clear spring water. The flush of his cheeks had yet to fade, and his lips were also red and swollen. Combined with his current appearance, it was clearly the picture of a person who'd been ravaged by a lecher. Yet the victim was unable to settle scores with the lecher, for the lecher was currently clutching at his chest, his eyebrows furrowed as he groaned. It hurts. Shen Qiao was speechless. Yan Wuxi gave a sigh. I used too much qi just now. Even breathing is causing my chest to hurt. Looks like I'll need to rest for a very long time before I can recover. He'd just taken advantage of someone, and now he was playing the victim. This man was completely and utterly devoid of any sense of shame. Shen Qiao's face alternated between green and white. How can you be so badly injured and still lack all self-respect? Would have been better if Yan Wuxi had remained unconscious, that way he had been for the last few days. It was you who said that as long as I woke up, you would do anything, Yan Wuxi said meaningfully. And now, a couple of kisses later, you're saying no? You're Taoist. You deeply value promises. Since you said anything, and this doesn't go against your morals or ethics, then of course I can kiss you, can't I? When it came to debates, even 100 Shen Qiaos wouldn't be a match for a single Yan Wuxi. From what I see, you're about healed anyway. You don't need the medicine anymore. You can just recuperate quietly like this. Yeah, Shen Qiao really does just keep falling into those traps, Truffle. I agree. An angry beauty held its own charm. Yan Wuxi was all smiles as he admired Shen Qiao, thinking that everything about this man's body, from head to toe, was exceedingly lovely to look at. Oh, he's so down bad. So down bad. Having been jerked around, Shen Qiao refused to feed him medicine up close ever again. This way, Yan Wuxi wouldn't be able to find any further excuses or chances. Every day from then onward, Shen Qiao would only stand at the doorway and cast him a few glances before leaving. Thus, several days passed. News from outside gradually began to trickle in. Hulagu had indeed passed on. Duan Wen Yang had taken his body back to the Khaganate to inter him, but there was another rumor circulating the Jianghu. One that said Yan Wuxi had also passed from the serious wounds he'd sustained in that battle. But because Shen Qiao had taken his body away so quickly, it was rumored that he died without anyone seeing his corpse. Naturally, the people in the villa knew that he'd survived. Though he'd barely been breathing when Shen Qiao had brought him down the mountain, his powerful abilities combined with Shen Qiao's rescue efforts meant that the single step he'd taken across the bridge to the underworld had been retracted. But outsiders didn't know this. A group of people had been waiting at the foot of Bamboo Peak for the results then, and they'd seen Shen Qiao carry Yan Wuxi down the mountain, and Yu Xingyan's grievanced face as well. No one from Huan Yue's sect had stepped forward to clarify matters, so everyone logically assumed that Yan Wuxi's life had flickered out as well. Those who didn't believe ran to ask the martial experts with the good fortune to have witnessed the match, like Ruyan Qihuai and Yi Pichen. Being Grand Masters, their opinions naturally carried more weight. However, Ruyan Qihuai didn't offer much opinion on their survival or lack thereof. He only said that Hulagu and Yan Wuxi were both one of the few martial arts masters in the current world, and that he greatly admired them both. Yi Pichen's response was much more explicit. He believed that both sides had been evenly matched, and thus they'd both suffered grievously. Okay, I read it correct the first time. There'd be no good fate for either of them. Guided by these words, many people grew convinced that Yan Wuxi had died. Then, if both the first place and second place martial artists had passed, who was the most powerful person in the Jianghu now? And more importantly, how would the gambling dens handle the betting results? Of course, more importantly. There were people who'd bet on both sides suffering severe injuries or on both sides dying, but it had been a third option bet, so most people wouldn't think of choosing it. The odds had hit a high of 1 to 37, meaning that if you had bet one tail, you'd end up receiving 37. Rumor had it that many of Funing County's gambling dens suffered huge losses thanks to this result and declared bankruptcy one after the other. However, there was one man named Shai Xingqi who'd made a huge fortune, and one night he'd become a supremely wealthy man. Who was this Shai Xingqi? No one knew. Shizun, Yu Xingyan, entered the room and presented Yan Wuxi with their accounting log. This is the money we won this time. It's more than 50,000 taels. These 50,000 taels had bankrupted almost all the gambling dens in Funing County. For at least 1 year, it was unlikely anyone in Funing County would dare to open another gambling den. Yu Xingyan smiled. Everyone is trying to figure out who Shi Xingqi is. It's actually not that hard to guess. Huan Yue, moon cleansing, and Shu Xing, star washing. Isn't it obvious if you think about it? Once your esteemed self shows your face again, people are going to be furious. Of course, Yan Wuxi would bet on himself. Yep. So, Shu Xing means star washing, and Huan Yue means moon cleansing. Qi means customer. Ay, ay, ay. Even if they were furious, there was nothing they could do. They'd set up the odds and laid down their wagers of their own accord. Surely they wouldn't have the guts to come running to Huan Yue's sect looking for trouble, unless they were simply tired of living. Yan Wuxi grunted in response, but he wasn't too over-concerned with the amount of money. Where's Qiao? A Taoist Master Shen is practicing the sword in the courtyard. I think he wants to go to Chang'an. Yan Wuxi beckoned him over. No matter. Come here. Yu Shengyan leaned his ear close and listened to Yan Wuxi's instructions on how to proceed. Then he repeatedly nodded. This disciple will go and do it now. Also, take 10,000 taels out of that 50,000 and deliver them to Chunyang Monastery. Yes. Were these words of Yi Pichen's really just him talking recklessly? Even a Taoist monastery, detached from the secular world, still needed to survive. Yi Pichen had just said a few vague words. Words that had guided people into believing something false, which had helped Yan Wuxi win the bet. And thus he earned his monastery 10,000 taels to everyone's delight and satisfaction. He's so ridiculous. Epilogue Part 2. 4330. Okay. Epilogue Part 2. Shen Qiao indeed wished to go to Chang'an. After all, Yuan Ying was still there overseeing the construction of Xuandu Monastery. He lacked experience, so Shen Qiao couldn't leave him there by himself for too long. Once Xuandu Monastery was finished, the Sui dynasty, we're going to say Sui dynasty would issue an imperial edict and the emperor himself might personally summon him. At that point, as sect leader, Shen Qiao would have to make an appearance. If he let Yuan Ying, with his clumsy tongue, meet with the emperor instead, Shen Qiao didn't need much of an imagination to know that it would be quite inappropriate. After deliberating, Shen Qiao went to find Yu Xingyan, wanting to bid him farewell. However, for 2 days in a row, Yu Xingyan either left early or returned late, making it impossible for Shen Qiao to run into him. It wasn't until the third day that Shen Qiao managed to stop him by the door. Yu Xingyan smiled. Shizun is currently bedridden, so this disciple is taking care of everything that needs to be done. I have to run about on so many errands. Look here. He held up the letter in his hand. I still need to help Shizun deliver this letter to Monastery Master Yi. If Taoist Master Shen needs something, it's better to tell Shizun directly. Shizun is sure to agree. Shen Xiao stopped him and coughed once. Actually, there's no need to bother him. I just wanted to say my farewells. Telling you is the same as telling him. Taoist Master Shen, you and my Shizun are very close, Yu Shengyan said earnestly. If Shizun knew that you said goodbye to me in private, but not to him, I fear that he'd be angry at me. If you're leaving, it's better to tell Shizun yourself, lest I end up in a difficult position. But Shen Qiao didn't want to talk to Yan Wuxi. That was why he'd come to Yu Shengyan instead. Oh, hello, Momar's Rover. Welcome. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. We are on the second part of the epilogue. There's many parts. We're actually not finishing all the parts of the epilogue today. Just part 5. But yeah, Yan Wuxi is okay. He's doing all right. He's healing up. And he also won a ridiculous bet that he placed using a pseudonym. And that's pretty much the song. And he kissed Shen Qiao. And Shen Qiao is kind of pissed about it. Again. But that is basically what's happened. How you doing? Doing good. Just got off work. Looking forward to crocheting while listening to the rest of the stream. Awesome. Have fun crocheting. Okay. But Shen Xiao didn't want to talk to Yan Wuxi. That was why he'd come to Yu Shengyan instead. In truth, deep inside his heart, part of him really didn't know how to face Yan Wuxi. He could only choose this kind of method and avoid him. Yeah, a ridiculous pseudonym. Yu Shengyan was about to say something when someone ran out and whispered a few words in his ear. Yu Shengyan's expression shifted drastically in alarm. How can that be? He was fine just this morning. When Shen Qiao heard this, his heart leapt right into his throat. What happened? Yu Shengyan forcibly calmed himself down, and his demeanor flipped. No longer did he try to make Shen Qiao stay. It's nothing. This one still has some things to take care of, but please forgive him for leaving first. After saying this, he immediately turned and hurried away with the newcomer without giving Shen Qiao any chance to reply. Shen Qiao remained standing in place. The more he thought about it, the more certain he was that the conversation just now had something to do with Yan Wuxi. And the more he thought about it, the higher his heart seemed to suspend itself. Thus, he turned right around and walked towards Yan Wuxi's house. Oh boy, he's gonna fall for it again. Yes, he is, Annika. Yes, he is. Even before he arrived at the house, you could see people darting in and out. Some were carrying hot water, while others carried laundry for washing. Shen Qiao's eyes were sharp. He caught the blood stains on the clothes right away. His heart skipped a beat. He dropped all other considerations and barged right into the house. Behind the folding screen was the bedroom. There was a person lying on the bed. Undoubtedly, Yan Wuxi. His eyes were tightly shut, his complexion a chilly white. Right now, it looked exactly as it had the day Shen Qiao carried him down Bamboo Peak. At the sight of him, Shen Qiao's heart almost stopped. He quickly stepped forward and was about to grab Yan Wuxi's wrist, wanting to thoroughly take his pulse. But right at this moment, Yan Wuxi slowly opened his eyes. Weren't you leaving? Why are you still here? His tone was cold and indifferent, and there was no hint of his smile from before. Even the gaze he cast at Shen Qiao was akin to an icy spring, fathomlessly deep. Shen Xiao was taken aback. His words of farewell stopped in his throat, and he couldn't utter a single one. In which he closed his eyes again. I'm fine. If you're leaving, just go, he said coolly. In the past, there'd been no method Yen Wuxi wouldn't use, nothing he'd stop at when it came to things he wanted to do and the goals he wanted to achieve. Given that the two of them had been together for quite some time, Shen Xiao felt that he understood him rather well. Yet, at this time, the usual light-hearted demeanor Yen Wuxi showed Shen Xiao had suddenly become cold and indifferent. Shen Xiao could not feel a single ounce of relief or joy in his heart. On the contrary, he felt a vague and indescribable sense of unease. Shen Xiao composed himself. If I'm going to save someone, I'll save them to the end. Since I'm the one who carried you down Bamboo Peak, I'll only leave once you're fully recovered. He thought that Yan Wuxi was already out of danger. Who could have known that this would happen now? Shen Xiao found his heart suspended once more. But Yan Wuxi refused to let him take his pulse. Thank you, sect leader Shen. Several times already, you've done everything you could to save my venerable self. My venerable self will keep this within my heart. However, Huan Yue sect has excellent doctors as well, and I dare not trouble sect leader Shen further. He hid his hand under the covers, closed his eyes, and pretended to fall asleep. Yu Xingyan had been standing nearby. He likely couldn't take Shen Xiao looking so lost and dazed, for he said, Taoist Master Shen. Shen Xiao returned to himself and asked, just before, I saw some blood on your clothes. What happened? Yu Xingyan said awkwardly, I was peeling fruit and accidentally cut myself. He raised his hand to show him. There was indeed a large gash along his palm, though the bleeding had stopped and medicinal powder had been applied to it. The dried blood mixed with the white powder gave off a slightly ghastly look. But Shen Xiao had seen all manner of hideous wounds before. A small injury like this was nothing to speak of. Yu Xingyan was talented and clever, and he showed much promise on the martial path. One could see a hint of his master there. All he lacked was experience, but a low-level mistake like cutting yourself while peeling fruit shouldn't have been made by anyone with any knowledge of martial arts, let alone Yu Xingyan. However, Shen Xiao was currently upset and distracted, so he'd completely failed to notice this ridiculous inconsistency. Shen Xiao glanced over at Yan Wuxi. His eyes were still closed. It looked like he'd fallen asleep. With Shen Xiao's character, he'd never do a thing like shaking someone awake, but hurt had suddenly burst inside his heart. You were the one who kept provoking me, but now you're going to ignore me instead? Of course, Shen Xiao's thoughts weren't this straightforward, but this was the general idea. Yu Xingyan was standing between the two, feeling that bizarre atmosphere around him. To save himself from further awkwardness, he tried to break the stalemate. Taoist Master Shen, I also want to visit Shixian and Cheng'an. Why don't we go together? Shen Xiao shook his head. You take good care of your Shizen. I'll head out first. He didn't look at Yan Wuxi again, but he kept his voice very gentle out of consideration for the resting person. Yu Xingyan rubbed his nose as he looked at Shen Xiao's retreating back. Shizen, have we gone too far? Taoist Master Shen seems upset. Yan Wuxi opened his eyes, then said languidly, if the medicine isn't potent, how can it be effective? He sent another glance at Yu Xingyan. I naturally have my reasons for treating him coldly, but you're forbidden from showing him even an ounce of disrespect. This disciple wouldn't dare, Yu Xingyan hurriedly replied. Where would he get the courage? Not only was Shen Qiao close to his own Shifu, but he was also one of the top 10 martial artists in the world, as well as a sect leader. No matter what point you brought up, they were all things that Yu Xingyan deeply respected. But what if Taoist Master Shen actually leaves? Your esteemed self shouldn't overdo it, thought Yu Xingyan. Shen Qiao is soft and gentle on the outside, but hard and unyielding on the inside. If he really does leave out of rage, your esteemed self might not be able to coax him back. I mean, he's got a point. Yan Wuxi smiled slightly. Truthfully, he already feels the same way, deep within his heart. He just can't put down his pride. His Taoist core is all that's stopping him. Really? Yu Xingyan thought to himself. How come I couldn't tell at all? Yan Wuxi seemed to have noticed what he was thinking. You need to spend a couple more years learning from Bian Yan Mei how to judge people. His Shizun had seen right through him at a glance. Yu Xingyan secretly stuck out his tongue, but he naturally didn't dare to say more. Sure enough, Shen Qiao really did leave. Early the next morning, before Yu Xingyan had the chance to see him off, he received a message from a subordinate informing him of Taoist Master Shen's departure. However, Shen Qiao didn't forget to leave behind a few prescriptions and pills for Yan Wuxi's recuperation before he left. He was kind by nature, but kind wasn't the same as foolish. Upon returning to his house, even if Shen Qiao hadn't been able to take Yan Wuxi's pulse, he quickly guessed most of what had happened. That Yan Wuxi had been faking his illness. He couldn't help but grow angry, and thus he'd changed his plans. His ideas of leaving in 2 days became leaving early the next morning. At first, Shen Qiao really did head for Chang'an, but when he reached Feng province, he ended up running into Yuan Ying, who'd come looking for him. After Shen Qiao had regained his position as sect leader of Xuandu Mountain, he'd sent 2 elders to assist Yuan Ying. Though Yuan Ying didn't know much about construction, he'd head to the site every day to do his inspecting, trembling the entire time. This continued all the way until Gu Hengbo traveled to Chang'an to look for Shen Qiao, whereupon Yuan Ying found that Gu Hengbo was far more meticulous and capable than he was when it came to supervising construction work. Meanwhile, news of Hulagu and Yan Wuxi's duel had been spreading everywhere. Worried that Hulagu would win, and even more worried that Hulagu would go after Shen Qiao in case he did win, Yuan Ying entrusted Xuandu Monastery to Gu Hengbo, then left Chang'an himself to look for Shen Qiao. Among Chief Ngui's 5 disciples, only Yuan Ying was unfamiliar with management and administration. Instead, he devoted himself to martial arts and his studies and, until recently, never took a step out of Xuandu Mountain. The other 4 disciples had their own individual strengths. Even Tan Yuanchun and Ui had helped a lot when Shen Qiao first inherited the sect leader's position from Chief Ngui. Tan Yuanchun was adept at training disciples, while Ui was good with trivial daily affairs. As for Gu Hengbo, Shen Qiao had never discriminated against her on account of her gender. He taught her the same things he'd taught Yuan Ying. Though her personality was somewhat colder, she was swift and resolute when it came to handling affairs, and her procedures were clear and organized. Having her there to supervise Xuandu Monastery, as well as to make arrangements in the capital, naturally put Shen Qiao at ease, compared to when Yuan Ying was tasked with it. I love that he is all for gender equality. That's a little harsh to Yuan Ying. Like, I get that he's like, this is not your strong suit, but ouch. He was like, yeah, I was rushing back because I didn't quite trust you to handle things properly. But now that Gu Hengbo is there, like, oh, okay, it'll be fine. After the two martial siblings met, Yuan Ying saw that Chen Xiao was fine, which put him at ease in turn. Knowing that Gu Hengbo was handling things back in Chang'an, Shen Qiao no longer felt the need to hurry there so quickly. He sent Yuan Ying back first, then changed course to Yuan Province. He planned to head south into the Chen Kingdom to take a look. Oh yeah, they just keep reminding us that he's basically useless. He seems sweet though. Like he's got a good heart, and it sounds like martially he's doing okay. Shen Xiao had only been to Chen once before. Yuan Qing had been sent there as an envoy of Northern Zhou, and Yuan Yang tasked Yan Wuxi with escorting him. Shen Xiao was part of the company as well, but at that time his martial arts had yet to recover, and his vision was still very poor. I do feel sorry for him as well. Just a little bit. Like, he still has good martial siblings. He's just kind of like, he still loves his siblings. Like, it seems like he's not necessarily jealous. He's just like, I see him like the younger brother that just kind of is like, all my siblings are amazing, and I'm happy to be here, kind of. He's doing his best. Like, that's the vibe I get. I'm here doing my best. It may not be the best, but I'm trying. And we appreciate him. I think I accidentally made a character resembling him. The kid is a genius medical cultivator, but hates every minute of being acting sect leader. I love working like in education, but I never want to be a teacher. I have been there, done that. I hated it because just based on organization and making those decisions, it's not for me. I am perfectly fine following directions or being delegated tasks. Like, I can accomplish that. I can follow directions. I can solve problems. I don't want to be the one making decisions. Yeah, at least he's not a traitor, so he's already got one up on two of his siblings. Also, he's night blind, which makes night hunts interesting. That would be a definite detractor from skills. That would definitely make life harder if you were night blind and trying to go on night hunts. Anyway, Chen covered a vast territory, yet he'd only been able to see a tiny fraction of it, and he deeply felt that it was a pity. Now that he had the chance, he naturally wanted to see it properly using his own eyes. At this time, Chen was in the south with Su in the north, Sui in the north. Aside from the Gokturk Khaganate, which was also a small country called Liang, with its capital Jiangliang, as well as another small nation called Huwu, located southwest of Chen. Ever since the Jin dynasty had migrated south, the common folk of the world suffered from war and displacement. Everyone hoped that an enlightened ruler could suppress both the north and the south, uniting the central plains and giving the people a relatively stable life. But as they continued to hope over the next couple of centuries, all their hopes netted them was the uprising of the 5 barbarians, along with the dynastic changes in the south and north both. From the Song dynasty to the current Chen dynasty in the south, and the Shou dynasty being supplanted by the Sui dynasty in the north. In the end, their hopes of reunification weren't met. No one knew when that enlightened ruler would finally descend, and no one knew who among Chen and Sui would be more likely to unify the lands, or even if the Gokturks would ultimately take advantage of their situation to claim victory instead. There were too many variables in these turbulent times. When it came to the question of to whom the world would belong, no knowledgeable person could give an answer that they'd be willing to stake their life on. Not even Yan Wuxi. He'd once favored Yuan Yang. And yet, due to the man's unworthy descendants, his dynasty had crumbled and the nation changed hands. Yang Jian, the current emperor of the Northern Dynasty, showed promise as a wise ruler. However, the noble families of the South held him in contempt. After all, this person had once served as a Xianbei official and had even used a Xianbei surname. Now that he'd usurped the throne and become emperor, he'd immediately changed his surname to a Han one, even linking his ancestors to a well-known clan within the Central Plains. How could someone this shameless be capable of unifying the lands? Hi everyone, sorry I'm late. Car was stuck in driveway, snow/mud, and other random BS prevented me from reaching my chilling spot to rejoin the group. No worries, Jason. Hope everything got fixed up all right with the car and it's solved, so like tomorrow's not going to be an issue because I live in the Midwest. I totally get it. Yeah, no, glad you could make it. We are on the extras, so the beginning part is the first extra was just basically Shen Xiao healing up Yan Wuxi. Yan Wuxi stole a kiss. Shen Xiao got kind of pissed, and we in part 2 kind of are meeting back up with Yuan Yang and heading to Chang'an, where Gu Hengbo is now chilling and helping with the rest of the creation of the Xuandu Monastery up there. And now we're just kind of rehashing some of the history and some of the political things that are going on between the nations and clans. So literally the next line I'm about to read is, there were too many variables in these turbulent times. When it came to the question of to whom the world would belong, no knowledgeable person could give an answer that they'd be willing to stake their life on. Not even Yan Wuxi. No worries. When people join in and comment, I really don't mind giving a quick summary. You'll see it like Esper Lady also listens to a different streamer, Kickter, who streams a lot of the days I do. So I'll do that when she pops in. So no worries. I like everyone to know kind of vaguely what's going on. Continuing. The Confucians claim that their own practices as orthodox. Confucian sects like Lin Chuan Academy resided in the south, and they naturally regarded the Chen dynasty as being chosen by heaven. As such, they believed that the Lord of Chen was the enlightened ruler who would unify the world. For the time being, the Lord of Chen did well to preserve his ancestors' accomplishments and carried out his governance in a clear, orderly manner. So there was indeed a sense of peace. Shen Xiao didn't support Yang Jian solely because he believed Yan Wuxi's words. He did so because he'd truly seen that Yang Jian was intelligent and capable. It wasn't enough for a ruler of a country to be astute. They also had to be tolerant towards others, and Yang Jian possessed both these qualities. However, these qualities alone weren't enough either, so he planned to visit Chen and take a stroll through the country. This way, he could relax while personally experiencing the local customs and practices of Chen. This method would be 100 times more effective than hearing descriptions secondhand. On the way to Jiankhan, Shen Xiao met the Li family, who were traveling there from Jiang province to seek refuge with their relatives. This family was both wealthy and large, and they'd even hired bodyguards to escort them. Upon encountering Shen Xiao and learning that he was heading to Jiankhan too, they invited him to travel together with them. Jiang province was province was currently part of the Sui dynasty's territory. Therefore, traveling from Jiang province to Jiankang essentially meant crossing between the domains of the northern and southern dynasties. Though the imperial courts didn't forbid their citizens from interacting, the split between the two kingdoms meant that there were areas without proper jurisdiction from either country. Quite a few bandits took advantage of this to cause chaos in those unmanned areas, so civilians, who were easy targets for looting, usually traveled together in large groups of horses and people. The wife of the Li family was a widow, and now she wished to bring her daughter to Jiankhan to take refuge with her birth family. Though she had servants to accompany her, as well as the guards she hired, she still didn't feel particularly safe. Meanwhile, Shen Qiao had an approachable appearance and he carried a sword, implying he had some measure of skill. These days, when traveling long distances to meet your relatives, an extra person meant extra help. Shen Qiao also saw that the other party was made up of a widow and her daughter, and since they were going the same way, he agreed. For the rest of the journey, he rode astride a horse together with the escorts. The escort agency had dispatched 4 guards in total, and the leader had the surname Liu. The Li family had paid a generous sum for those 4 guards, otherwise they'd have only sent 2. After all, in the agency's eyes, protecting 2 delicate women didn't seem like a difficult task at all, especially when there were already servants with them. At first, escort guard Liu was somewhat curious about Shen Qiao. He even inquired about his identity, but Shen Qiao didn't disclose much. Only that he was a wandering Taoist with a couple of years of martial arts training, and that he was now traveling the world. There were many traveling Taoists these days. Escort guard Liu traveled extensively, and so he'd met quite a few of them. After hearing what Shen Qiao said, he lost most of his interest and even thought that this man might have been planning to use his good looks to seduce the Li family's young lady to swindle some money off her. Or even worse, he might possess ulterior motives and be coveting the young lady's beauty. In truth, one couldn't blame him for these thoughts. The Li daughter was young and lovely, right around the age where she'd grow interested in men and thus had few defenses against a Taoist priest like Shen Qiao with his incredible poise. Though she couldn't approach him directly with everyone watching, she still sent people over several times to deliver him things. Sometimes pastries, sometimes other items. Though escort guard Liu would also receive a portion in passing, how could he fail to see that her real target was Shen Qiao? Shen Qiao had realized escort guard Liu's misunderstanding, but he knew that explaining would be useless. If anything, it could end up backfiring, and he'd make matters worse. Everyone would go their separate ways once they arrived in Jiankhan anyway, and the journey itself would only take a couple of days, so there was no need to delve into the details. After journeying together for a few days, they arrived at the foot of Qianlong Mountain in Huainan. There was still some distance left until the next town where they could stay overnight. They wouldn't make it there before nightfall. Thus, escort guard Liu made a gesture, signaling to everyone that they'd be resting here for the night. Shen Qiao breaking more hearts. Always, Truffle, always. $114. Actually, 14-15. I'm gonna blow my nose real quick. All right. Epilogue Part 3. The terrain was flat and spacious, apart from the mountain to the side, which would shield them from the wind at night. It was indeed a good place to rest. Escort Liu hadn't chosen their site haphazardly when he'd had them stop. Shen Qiao, however, possessed the keen intuition of a martial arts practitioner, and he noticed that something seemed off. He couldn't help but scan his surroundings. As the sun dipped low in the west, the world gradually dimmed. Shen Qiao's eyes had been seriously injured in the past, but with the recovery of his internal cultivation, his sight had essentially returned to its former clarity. However, he still failed to spot anything suspicious as he surveyed the area. A Taoist master, escort guard Liu had personally come to invite him. My brothers have stewed some dried meat. If the Taoist master doesn't abstain from meat, would you like a bowl? In truth, escort guard Liu wasn't particularly interested in this excessively good-looking Taoist. However, the man was carrying a sword, and it wasn't flashy, so it was evident he had at least some skill. In case anything happened during their journey, they could look out for each other. For someone like escort guard Liu, who traveled to Jianghu for a living, an extra friend was naturally better than an extra enemy. It's a good philosophy to live by in general. Shen Qiao didn't abstain from eating meat. He simply preferred lighter dishes. However, one couldn't be picky when out and about, so he didn't refuse the invitation. After thanking escort guard Liu, he walked over and sat down to eat the meat stew together with them. Both the wife and daughter of the Li family remained inside the carriage. The curtains were drawn, walling off the space inside from outside. Surrounding the carriage were the Li family's servants and maids, and the escort party also made sure to be discreet. They didn't disturb them, but rather kept a couple dozen paces between the two groups. I know the Taoist master is heading to Jian Khan, but do you have a place to stay? Asked escort guard Liu. If you don't have one, you can go to Bai Men Monastery in the city. I heard that the new emperor is very interested in Taoist alchemy. If it's you, Taoist master, I'm sure he'll elevate you. Shen Qiao was caught between laughing and crying. Though he was a Taoist, he wasn't the kind who refined pills or drew talismans. One must know that there were many kinds of Taoists. He didn't shoot down escort guard Liu's offer, though. Instead, he asked, I thought the Chen dynasty believed strongly in Confucianism. Why is the new emperor interested in Taoists? It was only after Shen Qiao crossed the border into Chen that he'd learned that the previous lord of Chen, Chen Shu, had passed away not long ago. The new emperor was Chen Shu Bao, and he was the first son of Chen Shu and Empress Liu Jingyan, as well as the rightful heir to the throne. But Shen Qiao also knew that Chen was Lin Chuan Academy's territory. Liu Jingyan was the Empress Dowager, but she had another identity too. Ruyan Qihuai Shimei. Escort guard Liu shook his head and smiled. How would I know something like that? Perhaps the emperor was taken by impulse and ended up interested in alchemy. Since ancient times, all emperors have pursued the path of immortality. Even people within the Jianghu itself claim that reaching the martial summit is to reach the realm of immortals, don't they? But an emperor ignoring national affairs to pursue an interest as illusionary as alchemy? Even if one spends a lifetime refining pills, they might not achieve any results. Doing something like that was truly putting the cart before the horse. Shen Qiao also knew that escort guard Liu wouldn't know too much given his position, so he didn't ask further. Everyone chatted for a while until the sky turned completely dark, and then they got up one after another, heading in to rest for the night. Taoist Master Shen isn't going to rest. Escort guard Liu couldn't help but ask upon seeing Shen Xiao sitting cross-legged beneath a tree. It was currently summer. People weren't too picky when it came to the great outdoors. Even without tents, many would sleep directly on the ground or on top of the two-wheeled transport carts. A robe as a blanket was enough to pass the night. Escort guard Liu and the others were long used to this kind of lifestyle, so they didn't find it harsh. I'm used to meditating for rest, even at night. Liu Xiang doesn't need to worry about me. Shen Xiao smiled. Escort guard Liu was a little envious. Ha! Back when I was studying martial arts, I too would often meditate in place of lying down to rest. Unfortunately, I've been running around constantly these past few years. I get tired during the day, and the moment I lie down at night, I'm dead to the world. Don't even know north from south. Over time, even the internal cultivation skills Shifu taught me have gone to waste. Which sect is Liu Xiang from? Asked Shen Qiao offhandedly. I'm a disciple from Zhangnan sect. Shen Qiao made a sound of surprise. Then you're from the same sect as Zhang Sun Shang? Escort guard Liu was dispirited. Zhang Sun Shixian is the sect leader's personal disciple. He's from a noble family in the Northern Dynasty. I'm only a son from a humble commoner's family and am but an external disciple. Being so coarse and unrefined, how can I dare to claim that I'm from the same sect as Zhang Sun Shixian? Only after Shen Qiao consoled him a little bit did escort guard Liu's mood take a turn for the better. He watched Shen Qiao meditate and recalled his own long-abandoned training. His heart ached, so he also sat down near Shen Qiao, ready to meditate for the night. In truth, escort guard Liu also practiced qi circulation while meditating on most days, but the majority of people regarded qi circulation and breathing exercises as something completely different from actual sleep. Though escort guard Liu had the desire to copy Shen Qiao, he couldn't even hold out until midnight. With his back against a tree trunk, he fell into a deep slumber. That would totally be me. I'd be trying to meditate and just... That very instant, Shen Qiao suddenly leapt to his feet and pounced forward. At the same time, a whistling noise sounded before them. An arrow streaked through the sky like a shooting star, flying straight at the carriage with the Li family's wife and daughter inside. No one had managed to react in time. Though there were people keeping watch, most couldn't starve off their fatigue by this hour, leaving their reflexes dulled significantly. Even escort guard Liu, who'd trained at an orthodox martial arts sect, had only just managed to peel open his eyes, looking up in the direction of the sound. But the arrow failed to pierce the carriage. Someone had caught it in their bare hands. From the arrow in Shen Qiao's grasp, there came a snap, and its shaft immediately broke into two halves. Then many more arrows flew over all at once. Bandits! There are bandits! Piercing whistles and shouts rang out over the open field. Even those in deep sleep snapped awake, one after another. They grabbed their weapons and prepared for battle. By the time they'd fully reacted, Shen Qiao had already caught 5 or 6 arrows. The enemies obviously hadn't expected there would be someone so formidable with this procession. The ambush had failed, and they were forced to switch to direct confrontation. They bounded out from the shadows and charged. This group wore black clothes, but a look was enough to tell that they were bandits. Escort guard Liu had mentioned that this place was a no-man's land, claimed by neither the north nor the south, and so bandits skulked around here. The Li family's wife and daughter hadn't thought that their luck would be wonderful enough to encounter such an event. They were screaming in terror inside the carriage, and the servants who'd been surrounding the carriage were sent scattering in every direction as they dodged and hid from the oncoming arrows. The scene erupted into absolute chaos. There were about 30 or 40 attackers in total, all capable fighters who'd been trained through their long years of crime. They were tall and strapping, with fierce expressions. Once the escorts realized what was happening, they all came up to join the skirmish, but they lacked the bandits' ferocity and quickly found themselves at a disadvantage. The Leaf family was wealthy. They were moving their entire household to Jian Khan, so they'd brought all their belongings with them. Anyone with a bit of judgment could tell that this was a fat sheep, prime for slaughter. Naturally, the bandits were unwilling to let them go and had mobilized this many men accordingly. But these bandits had never expected to face the likes of Shen Qiao. Yet they were so close to victory, and then they were like, Shen Qiao's kind of like, hey. For escort guard Liu, fighting 1-2 was almost pushing him to his limit. But to Shen Qiao, though these bandits were decently strong, none of them were worth taking seriously. If he drew Shanhe Tongbei here, they'd only be crushed even further. These normally undefeated bandits were no match for Shen Qiao. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched Shen Qiao take on hordes of bandits by himself. He injured some, knocked down others. Escort guard Liu finally returned to his senses and hurriedly called people to come forth and help, sealing each bandit's acupoints one by one and tying them up. The newest members of the underestimated Shen Qiao Club. Pretty much. Yeah! From behind Shen Qiao, an arrow came piercing through the air, fired towards the back of his head. He hadn't realized that the bandits had left some within the shadows, but with his martial prowess, it wouldn't have been too late to react. He was about to turn and block the arrow, but someone had been even faster. That pained shout was from the person who blocked the arrow for him. Shen Qiao was beyond stunned. He'd never expected that the Li family daughter, who he'd seen only a few times, would risk herself to block the arrow for him. He lowered her to the ground, then ran into the shadows with his sword and defeated the shooter. Only afterward did he return to check on the injured girl. It was obvious the Li family's wife, too, hadn't expected that her daughter would suddenly do something like this. She'd stumbled out of the carriage and was currently holding her daughter while crying. The arrow had struck the girl right on her shoulder, and blood quickly stained her shirt crimson. Shen Qiao had no choice but to carry the girl into the carriage. He first sealed a couple of acupoints to stem the blood flow, then he broke the arrow into two, pulling each end out one by one. Then he personally bandaged the wound himself. The Li family's daughter had lost a great deal of blood. She trembled and opened her eyes, her gaze darting around in search of Shen Qiao, until she caught him right in front of her. Taoist master, am I going to die? She asked in a daze. Shen Qiao was caught between laughing and crying. You won't. The location of her wound was tremendously fortunate. It hadn't pierced any muscle or bones. Though it was clear she'd lost a large amount of blood, the injury itself wasn't serious. Shen Qiao had never needed her to risk her life and take the arrow for him in the first place, but as she'd already done so, he couldn't brush off her kindness. He took out the wound medication he had on him and applied some to her, and then had her take another potion orally. He then explained to the Li family's wife that she'd need to administer the medicine to her daughter 3 times a day. The Li family's daughter tugged on Shen Qiao's sleeve. Can the Taoist master stay here a little longer? These days, the customs weren't as conservative or closed off. Though they still weren't as brazen as they had been during the Chu and Han dynasties, where people could make love in the wild and women could still pursue if they had someone they liked. As her own mother was right next to her, the implications of the Li family's daughter's words were more than blatant. Bad day to be a bandit. Very much so, Truffle. Shen Qiao shook his head. This humble Taoist is but a priest, involved in the secular world. I am grateful for the little Niangzi's noble deed just now. But this humble Taoist's martial abilities are still enough for self-defense, so I must ask the little Niangzi to not do such risky things in the future. Little Li Niangzi sighed. I've been admiring Taoist Master Shen this entire journey, and secretly paying attention to him the entire time. I knew that the Taoist Master's heart is as hard as stone and that he holds no such intentions towards me. But life is short, lasting only several decades. Just meeting someone I like is rare enough. For something like this, what's wrong with losing some face? If the Taoist Master were to be moved, then naturally I'd be ecstatic. If the Taoist Master remains unmoved, then at least I haven't betrayed my heart. I feel like if he'd given any sign at all, he could have had 10 wives by now. Oh, easily. Easily. The Li family's wife hadn't expected her daughter to say such daring words. She yearned to cover her mouth. Hold your tongue, child! Shen Xia was taken aback. This little Niangzi's words truly reached the core of Taoism. To do as your heart wishes without restricting yourself. Little Li Niangzi gave a weak smile. Taoism is about simplicity. I didn't expect Taoist Master to be less straightforward than me. Shen Xiao said no more to her. There wasn't much to say in the first place. He put down the medicine, gave the Li family's wife a couple more instructions, and left. Outside, escort guard Liu and the others had already finished with the bandits and were now taking care of the aftermath. These days, it was useless to hand such people over to the government since they didn't want to deal with them either. As the ones in question were bandits whose hands had been stained with blood, the only options were to kill them or set them free. If they freed them, returning the tiger to its mountain, then when the next party would pass this road, these bandits would once again show up to plunder and murder. Of course, escort guard Liu would never choose that. Once escort guard Liu had finished dealing with everything, he saw that a hazy glow had already started to tint the sky. It was no longer sleepy either, so he prepared to have everyone take to the road again. He saw that Shen Xiao was still standing beneath the tree and walked over to him. Shen Xiao's mind seemed to be wandering, and it wasn't clear what he was thinking about. Escort guard Liu couldn't help but smile. The Li family is incredibly wealthy, and their daughter is infatuated with the Taoist master. If the Taoist master is willing to return to secular society and marry, you'll definitely secure an enormous fortune for the future. Only then did Shen Xiao come back to his senses. He'd been plagued by his thoughts the entire journey, but now he'd suddenly been awakened by some words from little Li Niangzi, and it was as if he'd finally figured out a problem that had long perplexed him for a very long time. For a moment, his face relaxed, shining like jade against the faint light of dawn, clear and smooth. Even escort guard Liu was slightly stunned. He thought, no wonder little Li Niangzi fell in love at first sight, to the point that she could disregard her life. This Taoist priest is indeed good-looking, not to mention his incredible martial prowess. Liu Xiang, there's something I'd like to seek your guidance on, please, said Shen Xiao. Escort guard Liu quickly said, this one is deeply indebted to Taoist Master Shen for helping me. This one has yet to even thank you for saving my life. There's no need to use the word please. The Taoist master need only ask. Shen Xiao's expression was very solemn. May I ask if Liu Xiang has ever had a beloved? Escort guard Liu looked stunned. Huh? I love it. I love it so much. He just goes right out there and asks, like, have you ever had a beloved? Like, I think escort guard Liu was probably like, yeah, what you need, man? Like, I got you. Like, you need some food? You need advice? Like, what you got? And Shen Xiao just comes out with, like, basically, like, have you ever been in love? Okay. $135. Okay. Epilogue Part 4. What do you mean, a beloved? Escort guard Liu stammered. Shen Xiao shook his head, laughing despite himself. No, that was too forward of me. I shouldn't have asked a question like that. Escort guard Liu returned to his senses and scratched his head. Thinking that he'd roughly figured out Shen Xiao's train of thought, he said, Taoist Master Shen has been cultivating since a young age, keeping his heart pure and free of desires. I trust that this was your first time with such worldly matters, so little Lin Yangzi must have given you a scare. It's normal to be a bit confused about what to do. I love when Shen Qiao is an absolute disaster. Same, Truffle. Same. After the battle they'd gone through, escort guard Liu had dropped his courteous, distant attitude from before with a much friendlier one. I love Shen Qiao asking for dating advice. He's very straightforward about it, in a very roundabout way, if that makes sense. Actually, about what your esteemed self was asking, I'm not really sure how to answer. It's not possible for that many loving romances and whispering sweethearts to exist in this world. I was fortunate to be able to learn martial arts at Jiangnan Sect. It wasn't until I was 17 that I left the mountain and returned home. My parents arranged a marriage for me, saying that though the girl in question didn't know any martial arts, she'd been educated since she was young and was a woman of virtue and integrity. Since it was an order from my parents, of course I had to comply. I can't really say whether I liked her or not. However, since we married, my wife has worked hard to manage our domestic affairs, and I am incredibly grateful to her. Only bored scholars with too much time on their hands speak of loving romances, not people like us who travel the Jianghu, spending our days out in the elements, facing life and death struggles. Just like earlier. If Taoist Master hadn't been here with us on this trip, we really might have met our deaths here. Liu Xiang need not be so courteous. Yeah. Especially since he did in the most awkward way ever, as he would. Yeah. Very relatable. Yeah. Since we're traveling together, it's expected we should help each other as well. Escort guard Liu responded with a laugh. Once we arrive in Jian Khan, I must treat the Taoist master to a good meal. You absolutely cannot turn me down. I'd appreciate it, said Shen Jia. I'm not familiar with the area, so I look forward to Liu Xiang's guidance. Yeah, I do like when arranged marriages turn out to be actually okay. Yeah. As Golden Terrace, let's see what other ones. Wasn't I mean, Wife Comes First is turning out pretty good. Salted Fish, I enjoy. Yeah. Though I really love a drama when the arranged marriage pair schemes to unite their partner with the person they actually like. Yeah. I do like, though, when that turns around into them liking the person that's scheming to unite them with the actual person, thus they actually like each other. But then, there's always misunderstandings with that scenario. Like, we all know. Which will take like $3 to get through. And then they'll be like, but it was you! You all along. I know I liked that person before, but now I like you. Yay! Korean dramas have ruined me for a straightforward romance. I always expect misunderstandings around every corner. Perfect, said escort guard Liu. I'll be honest, when I first saw how erudite and frail you looked, I was afraid you'd be like those scholars who only carry swords for decoration. Never imagined, he hissed, that you'd be so strong. Fear that even my Shifu might not compare. Li Xiang is too kind. I won't treat Taoist Master Shen as an outsider, so I'll be straight with you. Jokes are one thing, but the Li family's young mistress is deeply attached to the Taoist master, and I do think she's a good choice. This year has been rather chaotic. The Taoist master is strong enough to protect himself, but instead of wandering alone through the Jianghu, wouldn't it be better to take the young mistress as your wife? The Li family's wealth, even if you can't become a great hero, you can still live as a rich and carefree old man. Shen Xiao didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. Lu Xiang has misunderstood, he said. I don't have any such intentions toward the Li family's young mistress, for my heart already belongs to another. It's only that before, everything was a bit of a mess, so I never gave it careful thought. Just now, the young mistress's words were the wake-up call that made me realize my feelings. Understanding dawned on escort guard Liu. So it's like that. No wonder you asked me that question, the Taoist master's beloved. How does she feel about you? Shen Xiao frowned slightly. That person used to be very aggressive, so I could only keep retreating, but later they seemed to have gotten angry. Escort guard Liu was a little speechless. These years, women have grown even bolder than men. He gave it a second thought. This Taoist master was so elegant and refined, and he was also a powerful martial artist. No wonder the girl had fallen in love with him. The Li family's young mistress had only seen him a couple of times with how she spends all day inside her carriage, yet hadn't she disregarded all danger to herself and jumped in front of him to block that arrow? Ultimately, escort guard Liu was a man with experience, so he began advising Shen Xiao. Women are usually shy, so it's already rare for them to bare their feelings, yet you refused her. If this happened a few times, a woman with thinner skin would of course be too embarrassed to come to you again. If you take the initiative to explain things to her, that should resolve everything, easily. The corner of Shen Xiao's mouth twitched. That person, their skin isn't that thin. Escort guard Liu laughed. If it's not thin, doesn't that make things even easier? I'll say it directly. With the Taoist master's character and looks, if you do as I say, she'll definitely turn shy and agree. Afterward, you can have a matchmaker approach her family to suggest the engagement. I love the misunderstandings here. Like, I know Shen Xiao is, like, purposely saying they and such. Shen Xiao sighed. They're terribly arrogant. I feel they won't yield now that they're frustrated. That's easy enough to deal with. Everyone has things they like. Just give her a couple of her favorite things and your situation will naturally improve from there. I must ask Li Xiang to please advise me, said Shen Xiao modestly. How about giving her some hairpins? Don't women usually like jewelry and hair ornaments? If she likes plainer things, gift her peachwood hair sticks or jade hairpins. If she likes the fancier kind, you could give her the ones inlaid with gold, silver, and precious stones. I guarantee that it's foolproof. Shen Xiao considered how Yan Wushi's arrangements and attire had always been prepared by others. A single hair stick on his head probably cost the same as an average person's yearly spending. He also hadn't shown any particular fondness for them either, so Shen Qiao shook his head. The one I love doesn't really have much interest in accessories. Yan Wuxi would like the heads of his enemies. If Shen Qiao gave it to him, he'd want to watch him take the heads of his enemies. Or Shen Qiao, think about his whole shtick. Fight him. He'd love it. Escort guard Liu friend. Then what about food? Clothing, food, shelter, or transportation. Surely she must have preferences about those. Shen Qiao thought for a while, then hesitantly said, they like Tangren? However, it was Shai Ling who liked Tangren. Did Yan Wuxi also like eating Tangren? Shen Qiao imagined sect leader Yan licking a Tangren in his arrogant and imperious manner, and his expression instantly contorted. Escort guard Liu also found it odd. Isn't Tangren usually enjoyed by young children? After a moment, he seemed relieved again, and he gave an explanation that he found personally reasonable. Taoist Master's beloved likely isn't too old, right? Shen Qiao lightly coughed, feeling a little uncomfortable. Perhaps. Escort guard Liu thought to himself that Shen Qiao's appearance was indeed the kind that young maidens were attracted to. After all, little Li Niangzi had only seen him a few times, and she was already head over heels. That's even better. The younger they are, the less experienced they are as well. So a couple of words from you will be enough to make her happy. Say, Taoist Master Shen, since your affections are mutual, why don't you try and find out what the little lady of yours likes? Feel like Yan Wuxi likes Tangren but considers it undignified. Probably. That or like it's connected to a memory. So like that aspect too, which I guess could be considered a like. I like tapioca because it reminds me of when I was little and used to help my mom make it. Because it was easy. We had a tapioca mix. You had to watch it. If you let it boil too much, it'd be all lumpy. Like lumpier because the tapioca's in it. But I still like tapioca now. I just never make it. So it feels special. In truth, Shen Qiao didn't know what she liked, but knowing that was still useless. I believe they like practicing martial arts the most. They also like competing with others in them. There were a lot of women in the Jianghu who were obsessed with martial arts, so escort guard Liu didn't find this surprising. With the Taoist master's prowess, offering her martial advice must be a simple enough matter. Shen Qiao rubbed his nose. I can't defeat them. Escort guard Liu was stunned. Women these days were really far too aggressive. No wonder Taoist Master Shen had rejected her multiple times before. He too wouldn't dare to marry such a tigress. Get that? I like rice pudding more for the memories than the actual taste. Never had it, ever, but it's been on the need to try list for some time. If you have the possibility, I definitely recommend trying to find, either make it yourself or trying to find a place that has it on offer, because well, it's not terrible, the pudding cup tapioca definitely doesn't hit the same. I love that he too wouldn't dare marry such a tigress. Yeah, Yan Wuxi's not everybody's cup of tea. That he was running out of things to say. In any case, just try everything you can. The ancient saying that with sufficient sincerity one can split stone and metal still has its wisdom. Since she likes you too, even if the things you give her aren't to her liking, she'll be able to understand your feelings. Shen Xiao understood that he wouldn't be able to get any more answers. Thank you very much, Liu Xiang. I've learned a lot. Escort guard Liu felt that though Shen Xiao was a powerful martial artist, he was completely clueless in romance. Hence, he gave him a lot more advice, even including how, when in the boudoir, he'd pick up his wife and walk around during the daytime. Don't worry about the way women act in public, where each one acts more proper and serious than the last. Once the doors are closed and no one can see, what's wrong with indulging her a little? Life is short. You only live a few decades. It's not easy to meet someone you like, so you should cherish her. Shen Xiao tried not to laugh. All right, I'll keep that in mind. By now, everyone had already finished packing. They all quickened their pace so as to enter the city as quickly as possible and rest. Shen Xiao and escort guard Liu fell to the end of the procession to protect the back of the carriage. They galloped the rest of the way, the wind whistling past them. No one bothered to speak anymore, and they naturally didn't know that within the carriage there was another conversation taking place, whispered and quiet. Little Liu Niangzi, who was supposed to be unconscious, groaned as she stirred, then asked the person next to her, "What did you think of my performance earlier?" The Liu family's wife spoke truthfully. It was a bit too exaggerated. Little Liu Niangzi rolled her eyes. I even had to deliberately injure myself to give Taoist Master Shen his wake-up call. But if Taoist Master Shen could see the light from this wound won't have been in vain. The Li family's wife was very sympathetic. It must have been hard. You really took that arrow. You don't say, said little Liu Niangzi miserably. It really hurt. Taoist Master Shen is too capable. If I didn't make the act genuine and he saw through me, what would I do then? Don't think about it anymore, the Liu family's wife consoled her. We know that this is a mission. The more thoroughly we complete it, the better off we'll be. The sect leader has always been generous, so he'll definitely reward you well. After going through an attempted robbery, everyone's hearts were plagued by lingering fears. They couldn't wait to reach the town as quickly as possible so that they may avoid experiencing another raid. So, Yan Wuxi has once again worked behind the scenes, as we now learn. Because of the little Liu Niangzi's injury, the group stopped in the next town for a couple of days. Paying for 3 meals a day on top of room fees wasn't a small expense, but fortunately the Li family was wealthy enough that they weren't too concerned about the cost. The Li family's wife was willing to pay so her daughter could rest a few days longer. She also thanked Shen Xiao profusely for driving off the bandits. She never grumbled about Shen Xiao causing her daughter heartbreak or injury. She even insisted on giving him a large sum of money. After about half a month, the group finally arrived in Jiankhan, and upon entering the city, the mother and daughter reunited with their relatives. Everyone should have gone their separate ways at this point, but the passionate escort guard Liu enthusiastically dragged Shen Xiao all over Jiankhan. He pointed out the local scenery and culture and then treated him to a meal. Afterward, he told Shen Xiao his address and invited him to visit in the future when he was free. Only after this did he finally take his leave. It's adorable how many of the minor characters are wife guys. Yeah, definitely so. After bidding farewell to escort guard Liu, Shen Xiao sought out the Bai Men temple the other men had talked about earlier, planning to stay there for a couple of days. Right at this time, an envoy just happened to arrive, bearing an imperial edict calling all eminent Taoists to enter the palace. Finding Shen Xiao's demeanor extraordinary, the envoy came to question him about his background. Shen Xiao answered each and every one of them using the exact same story he'd told to escort guard Liu. The envoy was very anxious about gathering enough people for the emperor's demands, so naturally he didn't question everyone too thoroughly. Furthermore, most people were easily influenced by appearances, and Shen Xiao's countenance aligned perfectly with how many imagined an immortal might look. May I ask the Taoist master, do you practice alchemy? Shen Xiao had wanted to say no, but before the word could leave his mouth, his thoughts shifted and he changed his tune. The Tao I cultivate is the path of affection. When it comes to alchemy, I may know the surface concepts, but I don't comprehend their essence. However, I do have some experience with fortune telling through facial features. The envoy was somewhat disappointed to hear that he wasn't familiar with alchemy, but when Shen Xiao mentioned reading facial features, he cheered up again. That means that the Taoist master also knows divination? A little bit, said Taoist master modestly. Today, His Majesty is interested in Taoism, and he wishes for guidance from all eminent Taoists. Would the Taoist master be willing to accompany to the palace? If the emperor is pleased, what awaits Taoist Master Shen will be fortune and wealth beyond your wildest imagination. Shen Qiao had come to Chen precisely so he could assess the Lord of Chen from up close and see how he compared to Yang Jian. He hadn't expected to be offered a pillow before even growing drowsy. As he wasn't on close terms with Ruyan Qihuai, it'd be very difficult to find another honest opportunity to meet the emperor if he missed this chance. Now that he was doing his cultivation in the secular world, he knew much more about how the world worked. If he rashly agreed, not only would he fail to demonstrate the proper poise expected of an eminent master, he'd even draw the other party's contempt. Therefore, he looked hesitant instead. This humble Taoist has sworn an oath before his Taoist forefathers to read the Taoist classics several times each day. He has yet to finish today's studies, so it seems that meeting with His Highness isn't in his fate this time. Perhaps another day. As Confucianism was enormously influential within Chen, there weren't many sizable Taoist monasteries in Jiankhan. This Baiman monastery was also not particularly conspicuous when compared to the rest. Having been suppressed for so long, when they heard that the emperor was summoning them, all of Baiman's monastery's Taoist priests grew increasingly excited, their faces glowing with joy. It was only this newcomer priest who held himself with such composure. Sure enough, the envoy's opinion of him rose, and even Baiman Monastery's other Taoists began to urge him. Taoist friend, you must accept. After all, you're a guest of our Baiman Monastery. If His Majesty grows angry and pursues this matter, we'll end up all being dragged into it. Only then did Shen Xiao sigh. Then may I trouble the envoy to lead the way? Shen Xiao wasn't the only priest being summoned by the court. Once he agreed, his name was entered into a register. After 3 days, when the envoy had gathered around 10 Taoists who seemed to fit the requirements, he finally led Shen Xiao and 2 other priests from Baimen Monastery into the palace. The Chen Palace wasn't much larger than the Sui Palace, but it was far more exquisitely and beautifully designed, fully demonstrating the beauty of Jiangnan. Many of the Taoists had never seen this level of opulence in their lives. Even if they strove to keep it from showing up on their faces, they couldn't stop their gazes from betraying their awe. Shen Xiao's party of 3 entered the palace and was led to Wangxian Hall. Wangxian Hall! Oh my goodness! Love it. Inside, there were 8 seats on each side, and most of them were occupied. The remaining 3 seats, which were closer to the entrance, were naturally reserved for them. Shen Xiao had no intentions of fighting with the other 2 priests for the right to sit first. He let them have the 2 seats in the front while he sat in the one closest to the entrance. The 2 men looked at him gratefully. To sit closest to the door, of course, meant that you were the character of least importance. His Majesty has yet to arrive, the eunuch said. Everyone, please remain quiet and wait for a moment. Being Taoists, they naturally wouldn't dare to be too loud, but quiet whispers were still inevitable. Shen Qiao swept his gaze around the room, and when it fell on a particular man, all the hair on his body instantly stood on end. He almost thought that something was wrong with his eyes. Originally, that man's eyes had been closed as if he was drowsing and had an air of haughty aloofness about him. Right then, his eyes suddenly opened and he looked in Shen Qiao's direction. 2 pairs of eyes met, but the other party turned away as if nothing had happened. Shen Qiao was speechless. All right, we have one more epilogue part to get to tonight. We still have more after that. Who do we think it is? Place your bets. Place your bets. I love how I can always be reaffirmed that my dust allergy is still active every single time I come to the basement. Probably need to change my air filter. Let's be real. Gotta be Yan Wuxi. Ha ha. Who else could it be? I think we are correct. Oh, my heating pad is turned off. Hang on. Oh, okay. Epilogue Part 5. 2:1:45. Okay. Epilogue Part 5. Shen Qiao was no longer blind, so there was no way he could mistake a person for someone else. What astonished him was how daring the other party was. Other than changing into a set of Taoist robes, he hadn't even altered his looks at all. He simply sat there inside the Chen Imperial Palace as the Emperor of Chen's guest of honor, with that face completely undisguised. Everyone knew that Chen was Confucian territory. To put it more bluntly, to Ru Yan Qihuai, it was a forbidden domain that only he was allowed to access, or perhaps it could be called a choice cut of meat reserved only for his pleasure. As an example, the Buddhist Tiantai sect was also located within Chen's borders, but Lin Chuan Academy had eclipsed it so much it had lost most of its radiance. If it were a one-on-one duel, Yan Wuxi naturally wouldn't fear Ruyan Qihuai. However, even a powerful dragon would have difficulty defeating a snake on its own territory. The great and lofty Huan Yue sect leader had disguised himself as a Taoist in order to enter the palace and meet the Lord of Chen, plotting to wrest benefits away from the Confucian faction and thus incurring the Confucian faction's wrath. If this spread to the public, it'd invite much disapproval and scorn. In Shen Qiao's opinion, Yan Wuxi had no reason to bring trouble down upon himself like that. But ultimately, Yan Wuxi was Yan Wuxi. If he moved according to other people's expectations, he wouldn't be Yan Wuxi anymore. Yep. Perhaps Shen Qiao had spent far too much time looking at Yan Wuxi, for the Baimen monastery priest beside him had taken notice. They leaned over and whispered, "Taoist Master Shen, do you recognize that Taoist friend?" "I don't," said Shen Qiao. "I have also just arrived in Jian Khan and was about to ask Taoist comrade Zhang to introduce us." Taoist Master Zhang said, "I only recognize the 2 priests across from you. One is from Lin Shuai Monastery within the capital. Lin Shuai Monastery is even more dilapidated than our Baimen Monastery. I have no idea how they managed to bewitch the envoys into letting them through. I love how Shen Qiao immediately thinks it's a plot. I mean, based on prior experience, like, I'd afford him the benefit of the doubt at this point. With all the shit that Yan Wuxi has pulled, like, everything's a plot. I mean, we've seen it's a plot. The whole carriage thing was a plot. Shen Qiao was caught between laughing and crying. He's been caught between laughing and crying a lot this chapter. People of similar backgrounds would disparage each other the most. Just because someone cultivated the Tao didn't mean that they'd necessarily carry themselves with the poise expected of an immortal. In truth, there were all types of people, never lacking in variety. I heard that His Majesty has already summoned some Taoist comrades, said Shen Qiao. Was His Majesty dissatisfied? Taoist Master Zhang said, His Majesty seeks immortality, so he naturally needs to seek Taoists out for guidance, but those Confucians are deeply against it. The largest monastery within the capital is Donghuai Monastery. Initially, His Majesty sought priests from there, but it's said that partway through their discussion, the Confucians caught wind of it. That Ruyan Qihuai was truly infuriating. He actually requested the Empress Dowager to pressure them. She exposed the immortal techniques of the Donghuai Monastery's priests as a ruse, then had them expelled. I mean, it's possible that Yan Wuxi could just go on vacation without trying to launch a coup. Not when Shen Qiao's there. He's got to show off to his boo. Oh. A hint of schadenfreude slipped into Taoist Master Zhang's voice as he went on. Oh, it's not for this. How would we have gotten our chance to distinguish ourselves? Those priests from Donghai Monastery wanted to take everything for themselves, and that's why it was so easy to drive them away. If all the Taoist priests in Jian Khan can join forces, we need not fear Linchuan Academy at all. Shen Qiao thought, I fear that even if you join forces, you'd still be no match for Ruyan Qihuai. If that's the case, why hasn't Linchuan Academy shown up with us at the palace today? He asked. It's your first time here, so naturally you don't know, said Taoist Master Zhang. Not long after the emperor ascended, the prince of Xixing revolted. Ruyan Qihuai is currently with the army, assisting with quashing the rebellion, and the Empress Dowager is overseeing things. She's responsible for coordinating and managing personnel on top of supervising the court itself. As she couldn't handle the hot weather, she's moved to another palace and is handling government matters from there. Yan Wuxi, look, I reformed the court. Shen Qiao, I wanted to just relax. Yeah, good luck getting a vacation, Shen Qiao. Understanding dawned on Shen Qiao. No wonder the emperor was so fearless. While the tiger was away, the monkey would be king. I love how he just said, yeah, his wife totally wears the pants in this relationship, even though he is technically the king. If the Empress Dowager finds out about this, might she not take it out on the emperor? Might she not take it out on the emperor, but transfer the blame to us instead? Asked Shen Qiao. It's no matter, said Taoist Master Zhang. I've already made thorough inquiries. Though the Empress Dowager is from a Confucian background, she rejects neither Taoism or Buddhism. She's different from Ruyan Qihuai, that stubborn old fogey. He can't wait to wipe out all traces of Buddhism and Taoism within Chen's borders. Now that we've received the Emperor's favor, as long as we remain prudent with our words and actions, nothing should go wrong. He wasn't a bad person, and he was very straightforward with Shen Qiao. However, even if the Empress Dowager wished to find a scapegoat to blame, she couldn't prevent the human's heart's weakness to temptations of wealth and glory. The Donghai Monastery's priests had only just been expelled, but a single summons from the emperor was enough to fill up every seat. Of course, there was one fake Taoist here. Shun Xiao couldn't help but shoot another look at Yan Wuxi. The man was the picture of seriousness, looking straight ahead as he sat quietly. He really did give off a bit of the air of an enlightened Taoist. After a while, the attending eunuch called out, then a slightly bewhiskered young man walked out from behind the folding screen. Everyone rose and bowed. The Lord of Chen's pace was neither fast nor slow as he walked with the carefree, leisurely grace exclusive to aristocrats. This special gait had a long history behind it, and it brimmed with the charm and rhythm of the two Jin dynasties. In the eyes of those who advocated for the gentry system, this was the bearing a leader should possess. Unlike Shun Xiao, the other Taoists didn't have that much on their mind. When they saw the emperor arrive, they all began racking their brains, hoping that they'd be able to win the emperor's favor today and thus propel themselves a step higher. After the Lord of Chen sat down, he first addressed all the Taoists. I have read all the classics. Confucianism places great emphasis on righteousness and Buddhism on reincarnation. Only Taoism attaches importance to the current life. What wise opinions do all you Taoist masters have on this? The closer their seats were to the emperor, the more the emperor valued them. Thus, everyone began to answer according to their seats. One Taoist with the surname Lin said, Buddhism speaks of 3 lives. However, when it comes to one's past and future lives, can one really perceive the effect of the merits from my past life leads to wealth and fortune in my presence? Taoism does not agree with this. Similarly, your majesty sits upon the royal throne because your majesty is the reincarnation of Polaris. Since your majesty is the emperor's star itself, what is there to discuss of past or future lives? Therefore, this humble Taoist believes those Buddhist statements to be absurd. With your majesty's heavenly talents, as long as you cultivate them diligently, why wouldn't you be able to ascend to heaven and return to the ranks of immortals? Lord of Chen was intrigued. Then, in this humble Taoist master's opinion, how must I cultivate in order to return to the ranks of immortals? Oh, Taoist cultivation is based on internal martial arts techniques. When supplemented with precious elixirs, the cultivator will naturally be able to attain the Tao and become mortal. This humble Taoist has much knowledge related to refining elixirs and is willing to work hard for your majesty. Good, said the Lord of Chen. Then these internal martial arts techniques that you mentioned, where does one find them? This humble Taoist is ashamed to say that this isn't my area of expertise, said Taoist Master Lin awkwardly. My strength is in refining elixirs, and I don't know much about internal martial arts. However, Xuandu Mountain and Qingcheng Mountain are Taoist sects with legacies extending hundreds of years. If your majesty dispatches someone there, they'll be sure to have everything you need. Shun Xiao was completely speechless at the way Taoist Master Lin dragged everyone into hot water with him. However, the Lord of Chen snorted coldly. Xuandu Mountain has already accepted noble titles from the Northern Dynasty. I heard they're even building a monastery in Chang'an. As a dog of the Northern Dynasty, how could they have any great talent to speak of? That's worth sending someone to take a look at Qingcheng Mountain. If Yi Chen is truly a capable man, there's no harm in copying what they did with Xuandu Mountain. I'll bestow him a noble title and have him serve in our court. But suddenly a chuckle ran out within the room. Cheng Shubao glared angrily and yelled, Who dares to laugh? Yan Wuxi put down the cup of wine in his hand, completely unconcerned with how he'd enraged the emperor. Slowly, he said, I was laughing. No, hang on. I was laughing at your majesty's inability to recognize gold when it's right before you. There are clearly eminent masters here, so why neglect them to seek help from distant places? Yipi Chen's reputation is undeserved. He lost to Hulagu. What part of him is impressive? Chen Shubao sneered. Oh, in that case, the eminent master you speak of is yourself? No, not at all. Chen Shubao was the son of the empress and thus had been designated the crown prince from birth. His entire life had been an easy road. Other than the fright he'd suffered during his ascension, he'd never had to deal with any obstacles or frustrations, so it was natural that he considered everything beneath him. Furthermore, he was the emperor, so it was completely normal that he had this kind of attitude. Yan Wuxi didn't give him the time to rage, though. He pointed in Shen Qiao's direction. The eminent master the emperor seeks, yet fails to recognize. Shen Qiao was once again dumbstruck. He finally understood why Yan Wuxi had snuck himself into this meeting. What other reason could there be beyond creating trouble out of nothing and messing up someone else's place? Could Shen Qiao's avoidance of him hurt so much that he needed to do this in revenge? Shen Qiao's thoughts couldn't help but turn in this direction, and a thread of melancholy swept through his heart. But sure enough, the Lord of Chen's attention had been diverted. He followed Yan Wuxi's finger and looked at where Shen Qiao was sitting. With this look, he involuntarily made a sound of surprise. Shen Qiao was sitting by the entrance, and because the light had been too bright, the emperor hadn't paid too much attention to him. Now, he scrutinized him carefully and realized that the man appeared outstanding, with a noble character. I swear, Yan Wuxi's hobbies are taunting royalty and outing Shen Qiao. For life, at this point. The Lord of Chen couldn't help but inquire, Who are you, and what monastery do you cultivate in? At this point, Shen Qiao couldn't pretend he'd heard nothing, so he stood and bowed with cupped hands. This humble Taoist thanks your majesty for the question. This humble Taoist is Shen Qiaozi, and he's traveled here from the north. Currently, he's staying at Baimen Monastery. By now, the Lord of Chen's anger from Yan Wuxi's arrogant attitude had completely vanished. Instead, he looked at Shen Qiao with a pleasant expression, a smile upon his face. Since you're so highly recommended, Taoist Master, I trust that you must be a man of illustrious renown in the world, and it's just that I've never heard of you. Shen Qiao said, Your Majesty is too kind. This humble Taoist is simply one who wanders the wilderness, who has neither renown nor importance. He also doesn't know why his Taoist comrade recommended him. He kicked the ball right back into Yan Wuxi's court. Oh boy, maybe this is flirting. But the Lord of Chen ignored it, since he'd lost all interest in Yan Wuxi. Does the Taoist master have any insights on refining elixirs? Shen Qiao shook his head. This humble Taoist is not an adept alchemist. He only cultivates one path. Which path? Asked the Lord of Chen. The path of affection, answered Shen Qiao. This was the same nonsense he told the palace envoy, and now he was using the same explanation for the emperor, completely unchanged. What is the path of affection? Asked the Lord of Chen, curious. When cultivating the Tao, most people emphasize purity and abstinence, believing one can only attain the Tao through distancing themselves from the dust of the secular world. But my path of the heart requires one to be immersed in the red dust of the secular world, to review the luxuries and riches of the world and carefully indulge themselves within in order to attain the Tao. Since he looked completely serious and proper, his expression solemn, No one suspected him of spouting nonsense. They only began to doubt themselves, wondering why they'd never heard of such a path. Smiling brightly, Yanwushi took another sip of wine. He thought, Maya Chiao has learned to lie without batting an eyelash. The Lord of Chen was delighted. Is this not the path I've been seeking for so long? I invite the Taoist master to stay long-term in the palace and educate me. Shen Xiao said, This humble Taoist wanders the 4 seas without any fixed destination. I only entered the palace this time because of your Majesty's deep interest in the Tao, so that I can resolve your Majesty's doubts a little. The Lord of Chen chuckled. The Taoist master is contradicting himself somewhat. Since you cultivate the path of the heart, you naturally love the wealth and luxuries of the secular world. I can bestow upon you the ultimate riches, so why do you reject it instead? Or are you playing hard to get and refusing what you actually want? Though this young emperor disliked governance, preferring a life of pleasure, this didn't mean that he was dull-witted. It was the exact opposite. He had significant achievements in music, wakey, calligraphy, art, song, dance, and poetry. Compared to the ranks of emperors as a whole, he was brilliantly talented with a far greater array of strengths than Yang Jian. Shen Xiao's face betrayed nothing. Your Majesty's words are incorrect. The path of the heart isn't a path that can only be cultivated while inside the imperial palace. Why not go out for a taste of the red dust of the secular world? With all its brothels and taverns, places in which you can cultivate are everywhere. Furthermore, today, this humble Taoist was blessed with the chance to gaze upon your Majesty's heavenly visage, and that is enough. However, I have some words that I must say. The Lord of Chen raised an eyebrow. Speak. The path of the heart isn't only about the riches within the secular world. It's also about the well-being of all people. Clothes, food, shelter, and transportation. Though everyone clings to the former, as your Majesty is the ruler of a nation, you must not forget the latter either. The so-called path of the heart was nonsense Shen Xiao had randomly come out with in order to test the emperor. He hadn't expected that the emperor would be so delighted at the idea and couldn't help but be somewhat disappointed. Hence, he came up with these words to admonish him. But the Lord of Chen didn't take it to heart. The Taoist master worries too much. Someone with as divine as an appearance as yours wandering outside is a waste of heaven's gifts. If you wish to remonstrate with me, you can stay here and we can discuss the Tao together every day. By the end of this line, his tone was deeply deliberate, eliciting many thoughts. Oh, Yan Wushi's not going to like that. Shen Xiao thought these words somewhat strange, but he didn't at all think that the emperor had seen him that way. Instead, he only thought that the emperor of Chen was unworthy of his reputation. Though Chen was based in the south, its territory wasn't smaller than the north's. Yet Chen Shu Bao wasn't Yang Jian's equal at all. The north was noisily whittling their knives as Yang Jian busied himself with stabilizing the situation with the Gokturks and imperial court. Yet Chen Shu Bao hadn't gone to quash the rebellion. Instead, he grew interested in immortality and elixirs. Looking at this trend, within a few years, who'd come out on top between the north and south would be easily decided. The two of them continued, each question followed by an answer, while everyone else was left ignored. The Taoists, who'd been anxiously seeking to distinguish themselves, had long been unsatisfied. One after another, they began chiming in. Some spoke on the emperor's behalf, accusing Shen Xiao of being unable to recognize heavenly grace and favor, while others hurried to recommend themselves to the emperor, claiming that they were far more capable than he was. Suddenly, Hanwushi chuckled. Qiao, do you understand now why I don't think much of southern Chen? Shen Xiao didn't have the chance to respond before someone else did. I didn't realized that Sect Leader Yan and esteemed Taoist Master Shen had graced us with your presence. We've been remiss with our welcome. Please forgive us. A woman walked out as she spoke these words, surrounded by a great number of maidservants. The Lord of Chen paled and quickly rose, putting his hands together. Greetings, Mother Empress! The newcomer was Chen Dynasty's Empress Dowager Liu Jingyan Ruoyan Kihuai's Shimei. And that is where we end tonight. It's actually a pretty good spot to end it before we get to the next arc. Yeah, that's where we're going to end it tonight. We still have plenty to go. I'll even show you. So this is what we've read. This is what we have left. So it's literally a little over half done. So we've still got plenty. Don't you worry. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I am enjoying the epilogue. I am also loving all the shenanigans, Annika. So many shenanigans. We've gotten through all the heaviness, and now we get to have fun. So this is going to be amazing. But I will see all of you on Thursday, hopefully. And if not, I hope you enjoy listening later. The extras definitely are so much fun. And I'm glad you are liking the story, Jason. And it's going to be great. Have a great day tomorrow, and I will see you all Thursday. Chaos, but make it fun. Of course, Momar's Rover. Good luck with your crocheting. Crocheting? Knitting? Crocheting. Good luck with your crocheting. Good night.